So this one's just a very quick video introducing the new direction in which the channel is going to be going, people. Literally filming it on my phone at something to 12 May 19th. Last day of the Premier League season. And I think next week we're going to have the FA Cup final. So just basic summary. Man City won it with 91 points, so breaking the 90 points total mark yet again. They didn't manage that last season because Brighton held them. And also they lost to Brentford, who did the double over them. A very late double, as I believe that game had a goal somewhere near the 85th minute, whereas the game where they won at the Etihad, that again was an injury time goal. So Brighton did a double over them. I think that's the fourth team. Chelsea was the first. And then I believe Tottenham was the second. And then the third, I believe, was actually Wolves. So that's how it ended. Of course, the Arsenal fans were hoping that, like the previous rounds, where teams had the prospect of taking something like City, West Ham would actually take something. So when West Ham scored one to make it 3-1, Arsenal were hopeful. Well, of course, it was never going to end that way, so it was idle. And besides, Arsenal needed a late goal to beat Everton. But the main observation is that Arsenal actually came second on 89 points, which is what City finished first with last season. Albeit they would probably have won those games if they needed to. That's a possibility. Also, they have preparations for the FA Cup final and for the Champions League final. Also, last season, people pointed out that had Arsenal at least beaten City once, then it's possible they would have taken the title. So that's another possibility. Because that swing, it was based on the City doing the double over Arsenal last season. Whereas this season, Arsenal actually took 4 points out of 6. So it's a big improvement, which explains why Arsenal were on 89 as opposed to something like 85, I believe they finished with last season. So that's a marked difference. And I was laughing because if you look at the table, City won it by 2 points. Now, had they been held by Wolves, it's very much likely Arsenal would have won it on goal difference. I can't recall the exact final table. Now, why it gets interesting is, Liverpool finished on 82 points. If you look below, I believe Villa finished on 68 and then Tottenham were 5th place on 66. This is interesting because the key game and title decider was that on the same weekend that Crystal Palace beat Liverpool at Anfield 0-1. Again, I think that's the first team to beat Klopp at home. Aston Villa won at the Emirates 0-2. Now, their goal difference is literally 2 goals, and they are 2 points ahead of Tottenham. And so, had they lost to Arsenal, they would have been below Tottenham by 1 point and 1 goal. Further, had they drawn against Arsenal, it's difficult to say, but again, it's possible they would not have entered the Champions League because they would have been level on points with Tottenham and level on goal difference, which shows that it makes a major difference when you have something to play for in the Premier League or all leagues. And it also shows the importance of that victory. And where it is somewhat tragic is that whereas Villa also beat City the week before they beat Arsenal, in the return game, City thumped them. Meanwhile, Man United were 2-0 down against Villa and came back 3-2 and also did the double over Villa. So Villa did a double over Arsenal, Man United did the double over Villa. Let's go to Man United. They're in 8th place. I don't believe they've made the Europa Conference League. No surprises. Even worse, with their 2-goal loss, with their 2-goal defeat of Brighton, I should say, Deserby's last game, because Newcastle scored that very late goal against them last weekend, it means United finish on minus goal difference. It also means they end the season with the most defeats they have suffered in a single season. So that's the other observation. I guess credit to Tottenham because they are in Europe. They're in Europa League. Newcastle, I think, have fallen out of Europe. And I think the Germans have taken the place of the English clubs because, over there it was a bit tragic as well because Stuttgart came second after Bayern Munich lost their game and came third by 1 point, which is funny because last season they won the league in the most ridiculous circumstances, winning away from home with a late Musiala goal after Dortmund threw it away during a match they merely had to win at home. So it's fitting that Bayern Munich would come third place on the last day of the season. Yesterday, that was. Most, most importantly, more importantly, Bayer Leverkusen finished the league something like 28 wins and 6 draws as they went unbeaten. And they are 2 games away from an unbeaten treble, which would be unprecedented. I believe Milan's unbeaten record is at 58. Now, if Leverkusen do go through and reach 53 games, then assuming Madrid win as opposed to Dortmund in the Champions League, that means the Super Cup would be match 54 unless mistaken. So that would be something to see. I think the other news is Thiago Silva leaving Chelsea so he could play the Dave and AJ Tracy song. And Kimpembe, I think he's going to be back in business for PSG. We won't be able to play the Champions League as PSG will never win it, especially because Mbappe is leaving. Over in Spain, Xavi signed off for a 3-0 win. I will say signed off as I'm not sure if he's going to stay or go. Madrid wrapped up the title, of course. And I guess like Man City, the interesting thing about that league is Atletico took 4 points from Madrid. They beat them 3-1 earlier in the season, a very impressive display, and then they snatched a 1-1 draw in the last minute. So that means they took 4 points. So Atletico, unless mistaken, is the only team to beat Madrid this season. I could be wrong. Over in the league, I think it's fitting that Girona did the double over Barcelona. Madrid did the double over Barcelona as well. Bellingham with 2 injury time winners. And Madrid also did the double over Girona. Now, I need to look over and check because I'm not sure if Girona did manage to snatch the final place, well, second place. However, if they do enter Champions League, well done. I'll say the other interesting thing is over in Italy, Sassuolo, I believe their name is. They did a double over Inter, and I think they're the only team to beat Inter this season. And I believe they also beat Inter last season, I could be mistaken. That was another very interesting result. This video is dragging on a lot. I was only meant to speak about the English League, which I will end on speaking because Sheffield United, I think they lost. I'm not sure by how much. But how embarrassing to concede 100 goals as professional footballers in the top tier. So 100 plus goals they conceded, smashing the record. They didn't smash the points record, but they have smashed that record. So that is really embarrassing, I'll say that much. Everton did their job well. They're staying up. Maybe those points they took against Liverpool matter. Maybe they don't. And I think that's another thing that will hurt Klopp. On his final season, he didn't get that last victory over Guardiola. Now, Klopp's never really been beaten at home by Guardiola. As the time Guardiola won at Anfield, that was during lockdown. So, could say that was extenuating circumstances. I think what would help Klopp in terms of his legacy is the 5-0 and the 4-0. I mean, the 4-0 game, I was rewatching that the other day, and the commentators remarked that Henderson was the only person that was fighting for them. And it's funny because I guess Thiago was in to replace Henderson, and Thiago's leaving this season. And apart from his man of the match display against United that time, he's been pretty woeful, absolutely woeful. So that's the thing that would hurt Klopp, losing to Everton for the first time in his final game against them. Although he did beat Brighton for the first time, he beat the Zebri for the first time, so that's something I guess that goes in his favour. But I think had he beat Man City in a game they probably should have won based on that 53%, things could have been different. But I think the wheels fell off for them after the Carabao Cup. After that, then we saw the silliness against United where they wasted it both times, which is sad because they even got held by United at home in a game they should have bumped them. Arsenal, I guess that was okay getting the draw, and for United they should have bumped, so that's what went wrong for Klopp. I think the injuries did, and you saw the ridiculousness of him trying to rush back Alisson and Trent and the others, Robertson, I believe as well. So this was ridiculous. But I think the big culprit, if we're going to say it, some people are saying it's Gakpo. I think it's actually Nunes, the ridiculousness. And if you look at that Palace game, for instance, the worst one was Jones. The worst miss was Jones, but Nunes was in there as well. And I guess that game should have finished 4-3 to Liverpool, but those misses were ridiculous. Well, yes, it was United. I think that's where it fell off for them. FA Cup and the league games, and then after that, it just kept on a downward spiral. It's unfortunate, as Klopp could have been the first person to take two league titles from a league where Guardiola is managing, and I guess next to that, Arteta could have become the youngest Premier League manager to win it, but that didn't happen. And instead, City break the record and become the first Premier League team with 4 titles. So that's how it panned out. Farewell Klopp, I'll say in terms of legacy, my pain is he lost 4 European finals. That solitary win against Tottenham 2-0 was his one. We lost against Sevilla in the Europa League. He lost twice against Madrid. That hurts. He also only won one Premier League title. And why that hurt as well is because he matched the 18-game winning streak. Fabulous. But he didn't break it. Also, he got to 99 points, but he didn't break it. The season where they finished 1 point behind City, I believe it was 97, 98. They blew that. The other season where I believe City came back from 2-0 down to win, I don't think they blew that, but I believe that was also 1 point. My thing is, had Klopp won at least one more title, I would have given him a lot more credit, but he didn't. That's the thing which I think I'm going to hold on to. I just wanted one more title to say, yes, you're up there, but 9 years, one title, one Champions League, some FA Cups, some Carabao Cups, it's nice, but I think if not one more league title, one more Champions League title would have said it. And don't get me wrong, Guardiola only won his Champions League title last year, and he's been in the league for the longest time. And I think in between, the only people to win it is Chelsea and Liverpool. So Guardiola has done brilliant things in the league, and it's only one Champions League, just like Klopp. So that there tells a story. I will say this: the FA Cup final. That's the last piece of action. United, I predict, are going to get thumped, battered. It's a team that just pulled through against Coventry, thanks to an attacker who, despite being able to see the off line, still ran ahead of it. So that was ridiculous. Coventry 3-0 down, coming again 3-3 to match United and only going out on penalties. And again, they should have won at the last minute of extra time, much like the United snatching against Liverpool. Ridiculous. So I think City's going to complete the treble, and I mean that, by beating United in the FA Cup. And I will say it's just a repeat of last year's final, which again was embarrassing because I think Garnacho was the only person playing with any heart. I don't know why Christian Eriksen was on that pitch. Terrible decision, if you ask me. Flat game. Compounded by the fact that City scored after, 20 seconds? United hesitant, staring, daydreaming at a ball they should have hoofed out, allowing a volley, either Gundogan or Silva. I think it's Gundogan, however I say or pronounce or spell his name. But that 2-1 loss. I guess the only pride, the only solace is United against that, with that dodgy penalty, scored the only goal City conceded in the cup. Now, why give credit to City is because they beat Arsenal in that one, whereas in this one, they won at Tottenham, which is something they've not done before. Also, they took that and they won at Tottenham Stadium in the league for the first time in, I think, 5 seasons. And they haven't scored there, never mind won there. So that was brilliant. Now, we know Son's miss was epic. However, forget that. Arsenal blew it. Okay, Arsenal blew it. Kind of like last season where Brighton thumped them 3-0. And also the 3-3 game where they were just messing around. I think those 2 games hurt them. There was other games, of course, and I mean, City did take the points off them, which made all the difference. But Arsenal did blow it last season. The 3-3 and the 3-0. But this season, it's the Villa game which they are going to sit with and regret, because when it's the end of the season, City don't slip up. Son was the closest they've come to slipping up, but he didn't convert or take a safe City. Well, Arsenal slipped up big time. By the time Liverpool lost to Palace, it was effectively over. Arsenal slipped up. Now, possibly you could say Liverpool should have beat City at Anfield, maybe. You could have said that Arsenal could have snatched their chance against City when they went to the Etihad, maybe, but that was one chance. And equally, I think what you need to point out anyway, City have just been outstanding again. And what for me turns this around, it is literally the late goal they scored against Newcastle when they were 2-1 down, and then scored, aided by KDB's goal upon his return and his last minute assist. So that there is 2 additional points. Now, why I say that is because, look, City were extremely lucky against Chelsea in the cup. Let's admit that. Extremely lucky. But the truth of the matter is, in the league, they was unfortunate against Chelsea. Now, I'm talking about the first game where Chelsea, like Tottenham, got the last minute equaliser. Also, I think that the Tottenham thing balanced itself out because City were robbed against Tottenham earlier in the season. So it's a 2 point swing either way. I'm not that bothered by it. It's a 2 point swing either way. So the Tottenham one leveled itself out. Chelsea, I think, is the closest that's come to beating City as of recent because they held on to what, the 83rd, 84th minute, and then Rodri scored that really nice shot of Scorcher. So those are the teams who could have taken stuff off City, but City have rallied with very, very impressive late showings, and they've done their job. I say the game they won the other day, I think it was 1-0 or 2-0, was away from home at one of those bottom clubs. That was actually a tough game. And I think they could have done more, or possibly City could have lost on another day. But City did what Arsenal didn't do, and that is they remained hungry. They were mentality monsters. And this brings me to the final point. Declan Rice, I think he's been exceptional. Odegaard, a revelation, but Declan Rice has been exceptional. I think it's the goal against United, the clearance against City, the last minute goal against, I think it's Luton or Nottingham Forest. The assist he started to come out with them goals in the latter part of the season. And I think it was the goal against Chelsea. Those are his highlights for me. There's been a lot more, but those are the highlights. So I think Declan Rice, he's worth the money. And I will say Arsenal have improved with him. It's just the striker department. And Nketiah, no. I get it, but no. You need a Osimhen, you need a Tony, you need someone else. This is where Arsenal struggled, if you ask me. That Villa game, both of those hurt them, and especially because Arsenal saw how Villa played City, and still they went out and they lost to them. That was the first time. And then the second half season, like I said, City thumped Villa at home. Arsenal lost to them. And when you look at the Europa Conference League, Villa lost home and away. Well, Arsenal couldn't score against them. So that's where the league was lost. I know it's old news now. Credit to them, but they blew it. They bottled it. They really did mess things up. Similar to the Champions League, where they had a chance to almost go through, but Bayern Munich were too strong for them in the end. They didn't succeed. And although people praised them, I said it from the start. I weren't convinced in that Porto game that Arsenal went through, winning on penalties alone. I was suspect because I don't think another team would have struggled against Porto like that. And this at a time where the people talking nonsense about Arsenal the favourites, Arsenal the favourites. Transferring the league form to the Champions League, which I don't think works, the domestic league to Europe. Wider Europe, I'm not so sure that works. So what else remains to be said? Liverpool, well, I guess they have a thing to say. People wanted them to face Leverkusen in the final. Instead, they got bumped. 0-3 at Atalanta. Atalanta again beating them in Europe, having won there, I think 2-0 the other day, a couple seasons ago. Liverpool retaliated 5-0 that time, but this time could only muster a 0-1 win. So that stands out. I guess that's the big one for me, Liverpool. Who's going to come in next? Well, same with Man United because he's not staying. He can't stay. Yeah, who's going to come in there? With Brighton, who's going to come in there? Even Juventus, they sacked their manager. He did win them one cup, but that's not important. He's gone. Who's going to come in with the Barcelona situation? Who's going to replace Mbappe? That is a key question. And it seems like he is going to Madrid. How's that going to work with Vinicius and Rodrigo? That's fascinating. Well, there's so many questions to be asked. And that's the thing. I guess people wanted Mbappe to shine and reach the Champions League final, but it didn't happen. Hitting the bar 4 times, I believe, 4 or 6 times over 2 legs. That was really unfortunate, but it didn't happen for him at PSG this year. And it's sad because I think that would have really defined him as a player, saying he doesn't need a big club that he could shine where he is, but Dortmund were too strong and did the double over them and are now in yet another Champions League final against Madrid, the old guard who always managed to pull it out. And apparently Madrid took their guide to drawing to hold in City in that memorable 1-1 from Arsenal's training book. So that's something to think about. Will Madrid win in the final? We don't know. But unlike Man United, who let City take their treble, Madrid said, "You are not going to emulate our success of attaining this cup." And so Ancelotti knocked them out and matched Guardiola with a 10-10 in the Champions League semis. And now let's see what happens in the final of both the FA Cup and the Champions League. So thank you for listening to me, and hopefully this will develop and improve, of course, and be a bit more dynamic, perhaps. But this is the first installment. It's no longer May 19th, it's May 20th now. Thank you to everyone who's listened and tuned in, and we shall continue to move forward. Guidance.